start with good morning, Miss Oliver.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. And
Uh,
you?
pretty good. Little nervous.
Don't be that. I'll make this as painless as possible.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, we're gonna start off with the first question.
The first question of this interview, I would like to ask you, what was,
Tried their best to protect us from
oh, excuse me,
the harsher issues of life during that time. I was born in 1952. Schools were still segregated. People were very negative toward each other racially, and um, but we were brought up in a loving family with I have 8 siblings, and we took care of the business of home more than any other business. We were not a political family. We were just an everyday country family, love,
Like now.
like now. And so our parents did not teach us to hate anybody, or did not teach us that white people were, or people of any other ethnic origin, were any inferior to us or superior to us. We were taught to respect people for their character, who they were, and what they did. And my parents personified that. They lived that out. I saw white folk and black folk um, interact with my mother and my father um, in a way that either they protected us from it, or they didn't let us see the part where if they were disrespected, they were disrespected. They didn't do it. And my father, I think they just more or less protected us from it so that we wouldn't grow up with any animosity in us and hatred in us to the point where we wouldn't be able to function properly as adults. Okay, so it was still segregated. I'm sure very negative, especially in the cities, but we didn't go to the city very often anyway, so we didn't see it. In the grocery stores were segregated. Most black folk shopped at a store called Piggly Wiggly or Winn-Dixie at the time, and it was in one big
So there's like
store,
one big general area where the black
one
folk would
big
go.
general store that most black folk would go to if they wanted to go to the big grocery stores. Otherwise, we went to the local grocery store in Blythewood.
Like markets.
There was
and
no, it was just one, like hardware, foods, everything in one store in Blythewood. Okay,
kind of like a Walmart, kind
like
of a smaller version.
it was a smaller version of a Walmart. That's right.
Second question. In your opinion, was there a big difference between white schools and black schools? Between
Yes,
education in black schools and white schools?
absolutely. Um, Now we didn't know this until I was actually out of school, but when I was going through school, as I understand it, um, our school, the black school, was actually in Blythewood. The black school was built after the white school, so it was a newer school in the first place. But we were told later that the books that we were using in the black school were actually the hand-me-down books from the white school. That we didn't have new books of our own. We always got the leftovers and whatever they weren't using anymore. Those were the books we got in our school. We didn't know that when we were going through, but that's what we were taught later. Okay, but our ball team was actually our basketball teams were in different leagues. They didn't we didn't White schools did not play the black schools. The black schools played black schools, and white schools played white schools. Um, uh, all of the competitions like spelling bees and anything like science fairs, they were all done black with black and white with white. Okay. Um, uh, when the white school buses would pass our school buses, sometimes they would throw up fingers at us. Sometimes they would wave, but because they were kids too, just like us, and the bus drivers were students just like us. So sometimes, depending on the character of people, things would seem not so bad. And because we moved within our own circles, we had a band, and the white school did not have a band. We had uniforms and everything, and I was a drum majorette leading the band White school didn't have that. We had the black school had a parade every year where they would parade Mr. and Mrs. Hanbury, Mr. and Mrs. Bethel, that was the name of our school. And they would parade us around Blythewood. White schools didn't do that. The white school didn't do that. So we had a lot of benefits that we didn't even realize at the time, but simply because our school was being run by Miss Hanbury, who was Native American and African American mixed. She seemed to be more Native American. And she had been given a grant to open a black school, and she opened it. Before that, when my mother came through, school ended at the 8th grade. They could only go as far as 8th grade. There was no such thing as 12th grade. With our school, you would go all the way to the 12th grade. Okay, and so the schools were very, very different at that time, very competitive. And mind you, our school was less than a mile away, maybe even less than a half a mile away from the white school. They were right around the corner from us, or right around a road from us. Okay, so they weren't very far at all from us, but yet we were far. Okay, and when I attended, maybe you're going to ask me later, so I'll just wait for your other questions before I go any further. Okay.
Yes, sir. Question 3. How did you get involved in the integration of schools?
When I was in 7th grade, I was about 13, 12 or 13, and there were some people who came around from the NAACP and the Southern Leadership Conference, and they asked if anybody would be willing to go to the white schools to integrate the schools. And they asked our parents those questions. And at that time, I had older sisters who were in the high school, the black high school, Hanbury, Bethel Hanbury. I was in middle school, and so I didn't have a problem with it because I really didn't have it in my head one way or the other. And so they said, you want to go to this school and try this school out? And my mom, who's always been a leader in the community, talked to my dad, and then they talked to us. And the first year, my brother, who was in the 3rd grade, and I was in the 7th grade, the two of us went to that school, and we helped 2 other young ladies, Peggy Bacon and Shirley Bacon. Those 2 young ladies, my brother and I, were the first to attend that school.
The first colored attendant.
The first black students to attend that school. And they came from Killian. We came from the Blythewood area. And they bused us to the Blythewood School. But they made us walk a mile in the morning to catch the bus. And they let us off a mile in the evening from our house, so we had to walk home. So we walked every day a mile to catch the bus and a mile from the bus stop back home. Okay. In fact, where our house is now, that's where the bus would drop us off, right there at that corner of Lawhorn, at the end of Lawhorn Road. Okay. And they did that out of spite because there was a white bus that would pass right by us every day on Lawhorn Road and throw things out the window and yell obscenities and things at us out of the window. They would just, to be mean, I do believe. But because we could have ridden that bus, why didn't they put us on that bus? They didn't. They put us on another bus that would drop us off a mile away from home. And I think that was just to discourage us from coming. But it was actually good exercise because my brother became an athlete. And I was very strong, and I could, like I said, I was a drum majorette. So I was very strong behind that, and so was he. We used it, the Lord used it to our good, even though they thought they were spiting us. Okay.
So you used it in a positive way.
We used it in a positive way.
Okay. Next question. How did it feel when you integrated Blythewood Academy or
Blythewood High School?
Blythewood
Blythewood School. It wasn't called high school. It was Blythewood School.
Blythewood School. Yeah.
Because we had grown up not really understanding the racial issues of the time and not actually participating in it so much because we were sheltered in the country in that way. When we first were introduced to racism through that school and that situation, I realized for the first time that people could hate you for no reason. I always thought if you hate somebody, you got to have a reason for doing that. Either they did something to you, or they were a certain kind of person. But they didn't know us. Yet they called us names. They threw things at us. They wouldn't sit beside us. They said we would stink, and of course we didn't. But they said that we did, and that's why they wouldn't sit with us. And they called us all just all kinds of names, and would throw things at us, and then act like they didn't do it. Look the other way as if they hadn't done it. They're just mean, just absolutely mean. And on the bus, they would have conversations around us about, well, it wouldn't be about black people that they knew. It would just be about black folk in general,
Like
saying,
spreading rumors.
yes, and saying negative, ugly, just racially charged things to us. And I, for the first time, realized that, I would look at the mouths of these little people, these young people saying these things, and I would wonder where they learn that from, where they get that from. And I realized that it had to be from home. Either they heard somebody saying that, or somebody told them that, or they were discussing it with somebody, but that doesn't just come out of you without it being implanted or the thought being given to you from somewhere. And so it's like the Lord showed us that they were being fed this on a regular basis. Mentally, they were being fed attitudes about black folk, and that's where that was coming from. Those attitudes about black folk, even though they didn't know us. Okay, so that's what it was like for us. Actually, once we got home, we had chores to do, we had cows to take care of, we had fields to chop, we had household duties to do, we had homework to do, all kinds of stuff we had to do that kept us busy. So you didn't have a lot of time to dwell on the ugliness of other folk, because we had parents who were very strict about our getting our chores done and had doing things in an orderly way, and so we did it. Okay, so we just really didn't. I don't remember actually hating white folk for doing that. I just couldn't understand where they were coming from with it. Okay,
Just out of the blue, just hateful.
it wasn't out of the blue. I don't think it was out of the blue. I think the hatred came from the discussions that they were having in their homes. Because had my parents said those things to us about white folk and called them the names that we were being called,
Then you'll do
I'm
the same
sure,
thing.
yes, I'm sure we would have responded to them with hatred and those names and those things too, because we would have thought that's who they are. And so they were thinking that's who we are. And so that's what they came out with. Now you do have to make a choice, because they weren't all like that. Not all of those students were like that. You could tell the ones who were being exposed to that and the ones who were not. Some of them were just like, well, they're just kids, like us. And even though because they were afraid of the peer pressure from the other students, they did not come over and befriend us in public. But some of them would, sometimes do little nice things. Like if we didn't have a chair and everybody else was sitting down, they would kind of inch over and enough way on over so we could sit down at the end, or, those kinds of things. So some of them tried to befriend us, but on the side. They never wanted to do it in public because they didn't want a backlash from the rest of them. So I can't say that everybody was like that. They were not.
Question 5. What were the challenges you faced before and after you integrated the school system?
Before we integrated, we didn't know what we were up against. Once we integrated the schools, I personally stayed on my brother, who was younger, the third grader, and my sister Shirley came the second year we were there. So I was there from 7th grade through 10th grade. Okay. And in 10th grade, I realized I wanted to go to college. I had been on the honor roll for years. And that year, in 9th grade, they recognized me as being on the honor roll. But from 7th grade up to that time, they would not recognize my grades, no matter what I did. I was straight A's and B's. They would not recognize it. And then they did start to recognize it later on. And I asked, well, how do you go to college? Like they were getting some of their students ready to go to college. I wanted to know, how do you get the other students ready to go to college? How do you go to college? Nobody would tell us. Nobody would explain that. Nobody would talk to us about going on and furthering your education. So in the 10th grade, I decided to go back to the black school. And when I went back, I talked to the librarian, and Miss Phillips, and I asked her, how do you go to college? What do you do to go to college? And she showed me how the test I had to take a test. I had to do really good, really well, and then I had to apply to these schools. And they would, if I took the test and put my name in a certain way, they would send me requests for me to come to their schools or apply to their schools. And that's exactly what happened. I took the test. I did well on the test, and I started getting um, um, applications from different schools wanting me to apply to their schools. And I, because nobody else in my home had gone to college before, I did not know how to do that either. So, and didn't know which one to choose because I didn't understand the difference between the colleges. So I more or less laid them out on my bed and I did eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch the tiger by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And it landed on Lincoln University. And I had already put into other schools, and I applied to Lincoln University and was accepted, and that's where I ended up going. I did not know at the time that that was a historically black university, meaning that was a black university, a black college, an HBCU is what they call them these days, historically black colleges and universities, HBCU. So, and Lincoln was one of those. It was one of the universities um, that on the Underground Railroad headed north. It was in Pennsylvania, and so I went off my freshman year to Pennsylvania, and that's where I finished up my undergraduate studies at Lincoln University. And that was because I went back to the black school and got the information as to how to go to school in the first place, because the white school had no intention of ever helping me to do that or showing me how to do that. I didn't ask them to help me, just show me what I needed to do. And nobody would do that. That's still happening, by the way, today. There are schools where they really don't teach our kids what they have to do in order to get ready to go to college. You can't wait until 12th grade and say, oh, I want to go to college. You have to start in ninth grade because your your grade point average, your GPA, actually counts from the ninth grade through the 12th grade. And they average all four of those years' grades in together to get one big grade, one average grade. And that will determine your standing in the class. So when you guys get to ninth grade, even now you get ready for ninth grade, but when you get to ninth grade, don't mess around in ninth grade thinking, oh, I can wait, I've got time. No, you can't. Because that ninth grade, those grades will count, just like your 10th grade, just like your 11th grade, just like your 12th grade. And they get 1/4 weight, just like the other 3/4. Okay?
So that
Nobody explained that. And they're not explaining that today to a lot of schools, a lot of students in some of the public schools and some of the other schools. Okay?
Question 6. Based on your experiences, how valuable should education be to African Americans now, today?
Well, I think education should be valuable to everyone, black and white, because there are a lot of white students who are not getting a fair shake with this too, but especially people of color, African Americans, Hispanics. I think education is one of the keys, but I don't think everybody is cut out for college. I don't think everybody wants to go to college. I think there are people who have natural gifts and abilities and they can use them in other ways than going on to college. I think college now is like high school used to be. It's equivalent to what high school used to be. We thought college was a big deal when I was in high school and elementary and high school. I thought, okay, we go to college, we get a good job. That's not necessarily so. Now you go to college and it's on the level almost with high school. You have to go on to your graduate degrees in order for you to actually stand out in this environment now. So college is a given now for you guys because you don't even get to be looked at for some jobs unless you've had that. Okay, they don't even consider you. Just like they used to not consider us if we didn't go. But some people who got jobs, they got jobs right out of high school because they graduated from high school. Now they don't even consider you if you don't have a bachelor's degree. Okay, so it's very, very basic, and very, very necessary for you to get a good education, to be grounded in things generally. But it's even more basic that you have a good character. And that's why I said I don't think college is everything. If you don't have I believe that if people don't have character, um, then they're going to be missing one of the main ingredients that will help them to move through life in a smoother way. Okay. I'm thinking about some of the politicians who are, some of them are well educated, but they don't have a good character. Lie, steal, cheat, commit adultery, you name it, they do it. And that's never a good thing. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Thank you for your time, Miss Oliver, Miss Barbara, Dr. Barbara Oliver. Thank you for giving us your time for the interview.
Have I answered all your questions?
Yes,
Have I
ma'am.
answered all your questions?
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. You will.
This is March 17th, 2016.